was a chilly autumn afternoon when I found myself scrolling through Craiglist, hoping to find a new home for an office chair that had served me well but was no longer needed. I had just moved into a new apartment with my best friends, and we were still in the process of furnishing it. The chair was in excellent condition, barely used, and I knew it would make a great addition to someone else's workspace. Within a day, I received a message from a potential buyer named Peter. He seemed polite and expressed genuine interest in the chair. We quickly exchanged a few messages, agreeing on a fair price. Peter mentioned that he was in the process of setting up his home office and needed a comfortable chair to work in. I was glad to know the chair would be put to good use. We decided to meet at a local Walmart parking lot for the transaction. Although I usually preferred public spaces for such meetings, I had a good feeling about Peter, and he seemed trustworthy enough. On the day of our meeting, I packed the chair into the trunk of my car and set off to the agreed-upon location. As I pulled into the parking lot, I noticed a gray Honda Civic parked nearby, and I immediately recognized it from Peter's description. I parked my car a few spaces away, expecting him to come over to finalize the deal. However, minutes turned into half an hour, and there was no sign of him. Feeling slightly irritated, I called Peter to check if everything was all right. To my surprise, the call went straight to voicemail. I sent a quick text, hoping for a response, but still, no reply came. As the sun began to set, I reluctantly decided to call off the meeting and head back home. The drive back was uneventful, but an odd feeling gnawed at me. Somewhere along the way, I noticed a dark red sedan following behind me. I brushed it off as mere coincidence, convincing myself that I was just being paranoid after the strange Craigslist encounter. I reached my neighborhood, and the car behind me turned away, seemingly vanishing into the shadows. I parked my car in the driveway and unloaded the chair, eager to put the strange events behind me. But as I stepped out of my car, I noticed the dark red sedan parked right in front of my house. My heart pounded as I locked eyes with the person inside the car. It was the same stranger from the Walmart parking lot, clad in dark clothing and wearing an eerie expression. Panic surged through my veins, and I quickly brought the chair inside, locking all the doors behind me. Peering through the curtains, I watched as the stranger remained in his car, seemingly undeterred by my presence. Fear and uncertainty gripped me, and I decided to call the police, explaining the unnerving situation to the operator. They assured me that an officer would be dispatched to my location. Time ticked by agonizingly slowly as I waited for the police to arrive. My eyes never left the stranger's car, searching for any sign of movement. My phone buzzed with a notification, and I glanced down to see another text message from Peter. This time, his message was filled with apologies, claiming that he had experienced an unexpected emergency and would try to reschedule our meeting. My instincts screamed at me that something was terribly wrong. The coincidence of Peter's sudden absence and the appearance of this stranger seemed too convenient to be just a coincidence. The minutes dragged on, and the unease in the pit of my stomach grew. Finally, the flashing lights of a police car cut through the darkness, providing a small glimmer of hope. 2 officers approached my house, and I rushed to the door to greet them. I recounted the entire Craigslist encounter and the subsequent events, leaving out no detail. The officers took the situation seriously and promised to investigate further. They decided to approach the stranger's car cautiously, not knowing what to expect. To my surprise, when they reached the car, it was empty. No trace of the man I had seen just moments ago. The car's interior was devoid of any identifying items, making it impossible to track down the owner. It was a baffling situation for the police as well, and they assured me that they would keep an eye on my neighborhood in the coming days. I thanked them for their assistance and tried to shake off the unease that had settled in me. In the following weeks, I became more vigilant, looking over my shoulder whenever I left the house. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, even when alone at home. My friends tried to reassure me, but the incident had left its mark on my psyche. One day, as I was recounting the entire ordeal to my friends, one of them suggested doing some research on Peter. He thought it was odd that Peter had reached out with an apology text, but then seemed to disappear from the face of the earth. Determined to uncover the truth, we delved into the online world, searching for any trace of Peter. But the more we looked, the more we realized that Peter's online presence was almost non-existent. His social media profiles were sparse, with minimal information and no friends or family connections. Suspicion grew as we dug deeper, leading us to a chilling realization that Peter's identity might be a fabrication. It seemed as though he had created a web of anonymity, making it difficult for anyone to trace him back. The more we tried to find him, the more we were led down a dark rabbit hole of deception. Despite the eerie encounter and the unsettling online discoveries, life gradually returned to normal. However, the feeling of being watched never truly left me. I changed my routines, checking my surroundings more frequently and installing security cameras around my home. Time passed, and the memory of that night began to fade. But then, out of the blue, a letter arrived at my doorstep. My hands trembled as I opened it, and my heart sank as I read its contents. The letter was a single sentence: "I'm always watching." Fear and paranoia consumed me once again, and I immediately contacted the police. They couldn't determine the letter's sender due to the lack of fingerprints or any other identifiable information. They assured me that they would increase patrols in my neighborhood and advised me to stay vigilant. Sleepless nights followed, filled with anxiety and fear. Every creak and rustle seemed like an ominous presence lurking outside my window. I felt trapped in my own home, afraid to venture out, yet equally afraid to remain inside. As the days turned into weeks, the police were unable to make any significant progress in their investigation. They maintained their patrols, but the sinister presence remained elusive. With no other options, I reached out to a private investigator, hoping to unravel the mystery behind the Craigslist encounter and the subsequent harassment. The investigator delved into every detail, meticulously examining the evidence and searching for any hidden connections. In a surprising turn of events, the investigator discovered that the dark red sedan that had been haunting me belonged to an individual with a long criminal history. The car had been linked to various incidents in different states, including petty theft and even stalking. The revelation sent shivers down my spine, but it also offered a potential lead. Armed with this newfound information, the police intensified their efforts to locate the owner of the car. As the investigation progressed, I couldn't shake the feeling that my life had become a twisted game of cat and mouse. I was determined to confront the person responsible for the torment I had endured. After weeks of relentless pursuit, the police finally located the owner of the dark red sedan. He turned out to be a cunning individual who thrived on creating fear and chaos. However, they lacked concrete evidence to make an arrest. In a bold move, I agreed to work with the police as bait. We devised a plan to lure the perpetrator into a trap, hoping to catch him red-handed. The police set up surveillance cameras around my house, and I prepared myself for the confrontation. Days passed, and the tension in the air was palpable. Every moment felt like an eternity, waiting for the shadowy figure to reveal himself once again. Then, on a moonlit night, as I glanced out my window, I saw him. The dark figure, clad in black, emerged from the shadows and approached my house. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched him closely on the surveillance feed. I held my breath, praying that the police would move in before he could carry out his sinister plans. Within moments, the police surrounded him, and he was taken into custody. It turned out that he was indeed the owner of the dark red sedan, and he had been tracking my every move since the Craigslist encounter. The arrest brought a sense of relief, knowing that the source of my fear and torment was finally behind bars. The police informed me that he had an obsession with manipulating people, using the online world to prey on innocent victims. With the truth revealed, I began to rebuild my life, step by step, trying to leave the nightmares of the past behind. My friends were my pillars of support, helping me find strength and resilience in the face of adversity. As I gradually resumed my daily routines, the fear that had once paralyzed me slowly faded away. The experience taught me to be cautious in the digital world and to trust my instincts when something seemed off. Looking back on that fateful Craigslist encounter, I realized that it had changed my life in ways I never could have imagined. It had thrust me into a chilling game of survival, where darkness lurked at every corner. But through it all, I found courage, strength, and an unyielding determination to protect myself and those I cared about. As I moved forward, I carried with me the lessons learned from the shadows of the marketplace. I had faced the darkness and emerged stronger, knowing that I could face any challenge life threw my way. And so, the ordinary individual who had once been a victim became a survivor, forever changed by the shadows that had crossed their path. It was an exciting time for me as I turned 18 and prepared to take the leap into adulthood. One of the first steps was moving out of my parents' house and into the real world. Luckily, I had a couple of good friends who were also eager to venture into independent living. We decided to find a place together and share the expenses, making the whole process much more manageable. After a thorough search, we finally found a decent 3-bedroom apartment that seemed perfect for us. The only catch was that it was located in a neighborhood that had a somewhat questionable reputation. People warned us about the area, but we brushed off their concerns, thinking they might be exaggerating. We believed that as long as we stuck together and took precautions, we would be just fine. Once we moved in, we divided the responsibilities of furnishing the apartment. Each of us took charge of outfitting our own rooms, and then we agreed to jointly furnish the living room. I, being the frugal one, decided to find a used couch to save some money. I had heard about Craiglist, but I had never used it before, so I thought it would be an adventure to try. I opened the Craiglist website and immediately noticed its outdated design, which made me question whether it was even reliable. Nevertheless, I forged ahead, determined to find a good deal on a couch. As I scrolled through the listings, my enthusiasm waned when I saw the condition of some of the couches. It seemed like the search was going to be tougher than I initially thought. An hour passed with no luck, and I started to feel a bit frustrated. I couldn't believe how time-consuming it was just to find a suitable couch, let alone get a response from a seller. But then, a glimmer of hope appeared when I received a reply from a woman named Susie. She had a couch available, but it wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Still, beggars can't be choosers, so I decided to give it a shot. Susie and I exchanged a few messages, and she suggested meeting that very evening. It was getting late, but I figured it wouldn't hurt to check it out. She provided an address, which I noticed was right in the heart of the neighborhood we had been warned about. I hesitated for a moment, but the determination to save money pushed me forward. As I arrived at the location, my unease grew. The building seemed to have seen better days, and the entrance didn't exactly inspire confidence. Nevertheless, I pushed the buzzer, and to my surprise, I was let in. As I climbed the stairs to the 3rd floor, I couldn't help but notice the peeling paint and the musty smell in the air. When I reached the apartment door, I saw a disheveled older woman inside. She waved me over with a tired smile and disappeared into the other room. I stepped inside, cautiously calling out for Susie, but there was no response. My heart raced as I peered into the dimly lit room. Something felt off, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Before I could investigate further, the door behind me creaked open, and a young woman asked if I was there for the couch. Confused, I confirmed, and she showed me to the living room where the couch was. It was in decent condition, though not exactly what I had hoped for. I decided to make the purchase anyway, wanting to get out of there as soon as possible. As we carried the couch to my truck, I couldn't help but notice that the door to the apartment across the hall, the one where the older woman had been, was now closed. It gave me an eerie feeling, and I couldn't shake the thought that something was off about this whole situation. On my way out, I encountered 2 men on the staircase. Their cold stare sent shivers down my spine, and I hurriedly left the place. Once I was in the safety of my truck, I couldn't help but wonder what had just happened. Why did that older woman wave me over? Was it all a coincidence, or was there something more sinister at play? I decided to share my strange experience with my roommates, and they urged me to be more cautious in the future. They even suggested that I report the incident to the authorities, just in case. That night, I couldn't sleep, as my mind was haunted by what-ifs and unanswered questions. The next day, curiosity got the better of me, and I did some research on the address where I had gone to buy the couch. To my horror, I stumbled upon a news article from a few months back. It detailed a string of suspicious disappearances and illegal activities occurring in the very building where I had been the night before. My heart sank, and I realized just how lucky I had been to make it out unscathed. From that day on, I couldn't help but feel a lingering sense of unease whenever I thought about Craigslist or that neighborhood. I learned a valuable lesson about being vigilant and trusting my instincts. As I settled into my new apartment, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was much more to that strange encounter than I could ever understand. It was a humid summer afternoon when I decided to scour Craigslist for a game console to surprise my son on his upcoming birthday. Money was tight, so a brand new console was out of the question, but I was determined to find a reasonably priced, fully functional one. Hours turned into days as I scrolled through numerous listings, hoping to stumble upon the perfect deal. Just as I was losing hope, my persistence paid off. I came across an intriguing post, a 2-year-old Xbox that appeared to be in excellent condition. The description was short and sweet, with promises of minimal use and a price that seemed almost too good to be true. Skepticism gnawed at me, but the pictures were convincing enough to make me take a chance. I messaged the seller, expressing my interest and inquiring about its availability. Days went by without a response, and I reluctantly assumed that the console had already been sold. Disheartened, I was about to give up my search altogether when, out of the blue, a message notification lit up my phone. It was the seller, apologizing for the delay and confirming that the Xbox was still available at the listed price. They suggested I pick it up the next evening at 7 p.m. and provided their address without any hesitation. Although it seemed unusual to share one's address without confirming the meeting first, I brushed off my concerns, attributing it to their eagerness to close the deal. Excitement took over, and I replied, agreeing to the specified day and time. The following day, I eagerly prepared for the purchase, but to my dismay, the seller didn't respond to my last message confirming my arrival. The clock ticked towards 6:45 p.m., and with no further communication, I decided to head over to their place. Arriving at the address, I found myself in a quiet neighborhood with a charming suburban vibe. The house stood at the end of a short dirt road, surrounded by tall trees that seemed to whisper secrets among themselves. As I parked, I noticed the house was older but well kept, exuding an air of mystery that intrigued me further. Stepping out of my car, I walked up to the front door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again, feeling a mixture of excitement and unease building inside me. Still, there was no response. Frowning, I glanced through the windows and noticed a faint light coming from the back of the house, indicating that someone might be inside. Trying not to jump to conclusions, I waited a little longer. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing a man who seemed to be in his mid-40s or early 50s. He had a shaved head and wore a blank expression, giving me a chill down my spine. With an oddly monotone voice, he invited me inside, and I hesitantly followed him through the dimly lit hallway towards the back of the house. The darkness inside made me uncomfortable, but I told myself not to judge hastily. It could just be the seller's preference for low lighting. As we reached the back room, I noticed a partially open door leading to the basement. The man nonchalantly gestured towards it and said, "It's right down here in my storage." My heart skipped a beat as I hesitated, looking down the narrow staircase into the abyss of the unfinished basement. The dim light from above barely illuminated the way, but curiosity got the better of me. I cautiously descended the creaking stairs, feeling a growing sense of unease with every step. The man followed closely behind, and when we reached the bottom, I saw the Xbox sitting on the floor. It looked pristine, just as the pictures had shown, but something felt off. The basement was virtually empty, with no sign of any other stored items. I brushed off my unease, assuming that the seller had already moved everything out except for the console. "Do you want to check if it still works?" the man asked in that monotone voice. "Sure," I replied, my voice sounding more confident than I felt. As I leaned closer to inspect the console, I noticed a small part was missing, which hadn't been mentioned in the ad. "Hey, it seems like this part is missing. Can you explain?" I asked, trying to keep the suspicion out of my tone. Without warning, the man suddenly lunged forward, kicking the Xbox out of the way. Startled, I took a step back, my heart pounding in my chest. Before I could comprehend what was happening, the man started running towards me, His face contorted with rage. Fear consumed me, and I turned to sprint up the stairs. My mind raced with scenarios as I climbed, adrenaline urging me on. I reached the top just as the man's heavy footsteps closed in behind me. With a surge of panic-fueled energy, I burst through the front door and stumbled out into the fading daylight. Seconds later, a deafening bang echoed from inside the house. Shaken and gasping for breath, I hurried to my car, not daring to look back. I fumbled with my phone and called the police, telling them what had just transpired. The dispatcher assured me that officers were on their way. As I sat in my car, heart still pounding, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this bizarre encounter than met the eye. The police arrived at the house, and I recounted the unsettling events. They confronted the man, who feigned innocence and claimed he was merely trying to sell the Xbox. However, the police soon discovered the truth. Hidden behind the seemingly harmless Xbox was a sinister secret. Its hollow shell concealed something far more nefarious. The man had removed all the electronics and mechanics, leaving only an empty shell. What was he planning? Why go to such lengths to deceive? As the investigation unfolded, the man's true intentions remained shrouded in mystery. The authorities delved deeper, and a dark and chilling past came to light. The man had a history of engaging in illicit activities, and his dealings had taken a dangerous turn over time. The incident left me with haunting questions, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of gratitude for narrowly escaping a potentially disastrous fate. The allure of a bargain had nearly led me into a perilous trap, and I vowed to be more cautious in the future. In the end, my quest for a simple birthday gift unraveled a chilling tale of deception, danger, and the darkness that can lurk beneath seemingly ordinary encounters. It served as a stark reminder that sometimes the world isn't as innocent as it appears, and that even in the pursuit of joy, we must remain vigilant to protect ourselves and those we care about.